All right, let's get into it. Today, we're tackling one of the most chaotic, fascinating, and honestly kind of overlooked periods in Sri Lankan history. We're talking about a wild 200-year stretch where the very idea of a capital city was constantly changing. It was this desperate search for stability right after a golden age came to a really violent end.
I mean, it's a question you see throughout all of history, right? For Sri Lanka back in the 13th century, the answer was, well, it was chaos. It was fragmentation and a 200-year struggle for survival that completely reshaped the island's future.
So picture this. It's the year 1215. The incredible Polonnaruwa kingdom, this center of civilization, is just brought to its knees by an invader named Kalinga Maga and his massive army. The whole established order, the ancient Rajarata, or Land of Kings, is shattered. This really marks the beginning of a long, dark, and uncertain time.
But, it wasn't a total wipeout. Down in the south, local leaders and generals fought back hard. You had figures like Sanka and Suba, who built these amazing fortresses on basically impenetrable hilltops, creating a defensive line that stopped the invaders from taking the entire island. So they held the line, yeah, but they couldn't create a new, unified kingdom. A huge power vacuum was left behind. All this chaos brings up a really important question. Why did the heart of Sri Lankan power start this long, slow drift to the south? It wasn't random, not at all. It was a very deliberate response to a new and pretty dangerous reality. And it really boils down to two main things. First up, security. With constant invasions and internal fighting, finding a defensible spot became priority number one. And second, money. The global demand for Sri Lanka's spices, which grew in the island's wet zone, was just exploding. So power did what it always does. It followed the money, shifting the entire economic center of the island. And this sort of pressure cooker of security threats and economic changes led to this incredible rapid succession of kingdoms. It wasn't just one move. It was this frantic, decades-long search for a place that could be both safe and prosperous. So out of all that chaos, a local chief, Vijayabahu III, steps up. He establishes a brand new kingdom at Dambadenia and manages to unify the central region. And here's the really crucial part. He secures the saber tooth relic, which is the ultimate symbol of kingship, bringing it from its hiding place to his new capital. That was a huge deal. The kingdom really hit its peak under his son, Parakramabahu II. This guy wasn't just a king, he was a brilliant scholar. His knowledge was so deep he actually earned the title Kalikala Sahitya Sarvagna Pandita, which basically means the all-knowing sage of the modern era. He even wrote a poetic masterpiece, the Kav Salumana. And his talents weren't just academic, not by a long shot. He was a unifier. After 40 long years, he finally kicked Kalinga Maga out of the country for good. He fought off 2 separate invasions and reunified the entire island, all while overseeing major projects like building roads and bridges. For a brief, shining moment, it really felt like the glory days were back. But that piece? It was fragile. After Parakramabahu's son was assassinated, the next king, Bhuwanakabahu I, made a really telling move. He moved the capital again, this time to Yapua, a spectacular and, more importantly, a highly defensible rock fortress. You can see right there, security was once again the top concern. And the journey continued. The next capital was Kuranegala. Now, while a few kings ruled from there, its most lasting legacy was cultural. It was during this period that the famous Pansiya Panas Jataka Potha, a collection of 550 stories of the Buddha's past lives, was translated from Pali into Sinhala. This made it accessible to everyday people, which is huge. And the journey comes to a temporary end in Gampola. This era was politically messy. The king wasn't the only one calling the shots. A powerful minister named Alakeshwara had immense influence, even building his own fortress at a place called Kate. This period also saw the arrival of the famous Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta, which gives us this fascinating outsider's view of the island at the time. And this timeline just shows you the instability perfectly. Dambania, Yapuhua, Kurunegala, Gambola. We're talking 4 different capitals in just over 100 years. Every single move was a reaction, another desperate attempt to find a permanent home in a world that just wouldn't sit still. But after 2 centuries of division and moving around, one king would finally rise up with a single massive ambition: to end the chaos, to unify the island, and to establish a kingdom that would actually last. And that brings us to the Kordi Kingdom.
Enter King Parakramabahu VI. He sets up his capital at Kate, that same fortress the powerful minister Alakeshwara built, and he sets out to do what hadn't been done for generations, bring the entire island under a single flag.
His strategy was just methodical and brilliant. First, he sends his adopted son, Prince Sapumol, north to capture the kingdom of Jaffna. Check. Then, he sends another prince to the Central Highlands to crush a rebellion there. Check. And with those two major victories, the entire island was unified under his rule. Think about that. It was a feat that would never be repeated by a native Sri Lankan ruler ever again.
So what happens when you finally get peace and stability after 200 years of non-stop conflict? You get a renaissance. With the kingdom finally secure, Parakramabahu VI was able to support a golden age of literature and education, becoming a patron to brilliant scholars and poets.
I mean, just look at this list. These are some of the most celebrated works in all of Sinhala literature. Many are still studied today. You've got these incredible poems and epics that all flourished in the peace and prosperity of the Kate kingdom. This was the cultural reward for 2 centuries of struggle. So, after this whirlwind tour of wandering kingdoms, what's the big takeaway? What is the ultimate legacy of this 200-year period? You know, it's easy to look at this time as just an era of decline, but that's really not the whole picture. The key thing to remember is that this was a period of unbelievable resilience. It was all about adaptation. Faced with these huge pressures, both from outside and inside, these kingdoms didn't just collapse. They moved, they adapted, they preserved their culture, and they survived long enough to eventually flourish again. So our story ends here, with a unified island and a cultural golden age under the Kota kingdom. But of course, history never really stops, does it? As Parakramabahu VI's reign was ending, a new power was appearing on the world's oceans. A power that would soon reach Sri Lanka's shores and change everything all over again.